Hi, and welcome to Voices Beneath the Waves. My name is Stephanie Miele, and this month I have an amazing guest and fellow sea sister to interview. So, without further ado, please welcome Dr. Allison Vitsky Sallmon. Hey,
Hi.
how's
How's it
how's it
going?
going?
It's going.
Good,
It's
good.
going somewhere.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you for doing this.
Of course.
It's a it's a special month for multiple reasons, but I really wanted to feature you on our October month podcast because it is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and
Right.
you're an advocate. You're multiple things to many people. So let me just read your bio, and I know it's much more detailed than this, but just to give the viewership an idea of who you are and what you do. So, Dr. Allison Vitsky Sallmon began diving in 1992 and holds certifications from NAUI, PADI, TDI, and NSS-CDS. A breast cancer survivor. Allison is the founder and president of Dive Into the Pink, a nonprofit organization that harnesses the power of the diving community to fund cancer research and patient support. Since 2015, you have raised and distributed nearly $200,000 through diving and underwater photography related activities. I know there's more to this, and I know you do a ton of photography. And I wanted to take the viewership through kind of like a timeline, and this one's personal. I think it to both of us for different reasons, and I really got to say, the first time I met you, it struck me because you were so kind and warm to me when I was in just a crappy time. It was a beautiful time and a very sad time at the same time. And we met at D.V.M several years ago. I was coming up on the year anniversary of my dad's death, and as I was being inducted into the Hall of Fame, a very close friend of mine, she was the maid of honor at my wedding. She was there when my child was born. We were college roommates. We went through nearly every rite of passage. Was entering hospice for breast cancer. She passed a couple days after I was inducted, and you gave me the biggest hug, and you just listened. So I cannot thank you enough for being that person to me at that point in time.
I'm so sorry.
No, it's and your story has stuck with me. It's stuck with me, and I would love if you wouldn't mind sharing the story of how you discovered your breast cancer, and how that came to be.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, I am so sorry about your friend. And it's something that's so common. And you, you grow up, you don't really think about it that much for most people. And then it's funny, one day you realize it is breast cancer is so common and so many people will be affected by it directly, indirectly. So for me, um, I I was pretty young. I was 33, and I had just finished uh, my residency and was about a year into a postdoctoral fellowship. And I was very lucky because I was in Boston and I had excellent care. I was a postdoc at MIT, so I had access to physicians from, from Harvard and Mass General and institutions like that. I was incredibly lucky. Um, One day I was in the shower and without getting graphic and putting hands on myself right now, basically I was washing my left breast and I felt a nodule in like on the outside of my breast and um, on the outer portion of my breast, I should say, not like sticking out of my breast, but I called. It's so you say on the outside. I don't want people to think it was pop. Yeah. So I called the student health center, and I had an OBGYN physician who I had been seeing there, and she was out of the office. Um, and I saw they got me right in to see somebody else, and it was somebody who I was not so familiar with. I had never met him before. And, I might not have thought anything about it, but my mom had breast cancer that was fully excised when I was in, I think, high school, later in high school. And so when I was 30, and they had recommended that I do my first mammogram. So I had had a mammogram and it was completely clean, like a year or two before. And this guy said, well, you've had a mammogram, wasn't that long ago. It was completely clean. You're extremely young. I'm not convinced that this is anything. You're really kind of too young to have breast cancer, and maybe you should just not worry about it so much. And I basically, for all intents and purposes, essentially told him to shove it. And I just said, look, I get it. You don't know me, but I've been living in this body for 33 years, and this is not what my left breast feels like. It's new, and I want to have it evaluated. And basically, you can either refer me now, or I can call here every single day until somebody refers me. But that's your choice. If that's how you want to play this, that's what we'll do. So he referred me, and it took a couple of weeks because of the type of cancer that I had. They weren't really, it didn't, it didn't really look like a typical breast cancer case. It was extremely anaplastic in that the cells were not readily recognizable for what they would normally see. They didn't take up the markers that they would normally expect them to take up when they do special, like extra stains on them to try to identify what it is. But I did get a diagnosis. And yeah, I mean, I remember I went back over to the Student Health Center to try to get referrals to get seen by an oncologist. And I saw him while I was there, the physician who had seen me, and he asked me how I was doing. And I was really nice to him, but I just said, yeah, it was, it's a high grade breast cancer. And I just will remember the blood drained out of his face. And, I, I'm sure he learned something from that day. Yeah, and for me at the time, I wasn't really diving all that much. I was just in the middle of school and doing nothing but studying and working all the time. And I was, young enough that I needed not just surgery, but chemotherapy. And so I had 4 rounds of pretty intense chemotherapy, and then a number of surgeries to go ahead and proceed with reconstruction. And yeah, I just remember after I finished chemotherapy, but while I was still sort of interim with the surgeries, I was, as I said, I was in Boston, and it is kind of all tied in together a little bit for me with diving, because I had been an avid warm water diver and I had never pursued cold water diving before. And I just remember I was outside looking at the water, and I just was like, there's water here. Why don't I just start cold water diving? And so that, it's funny in a way, breast cancer almost opened up a whole new world of diving for me. But yeah, and since that time, I haven't had any issues, and I actually got graduated from oncology now, so I don't see an oncologist anymore. So that's great. But I think years passed, and I stopped doing some of the walks and runs and things that I normally do, and I wanted to find a way to give back. And the one thing I really loved to do was dive, and so that's kind of how this all came about.
Nice.
I probably went farther into the next set of the story that.
No, that it's fantastic. It's fantastic. You basically were in my old stomping grounds. So I'm from Rhode Island. Did a ton of cold water diving right off the coast. I'm very familiar with Boston.
Yep.
So it's one of my most favorite cities. It's amazing, and it's just such a special place, and the diving there is quite unique, and there are so many amazing things to see. And so that jumping off point, after you graduated, how did establishing the nonprofit come into play? What was the impetus for that?
It was years. So I finished, trying to think, I finished my postdoc in 2003 and was working for a lab in Boston for 4 years, and then got an offer to take a new position in San Diego. And I think as I think I was doing a lot of the walks and runs and stuff. I was still very involved when I was living in Boston, and I moved out to San Diego, and I did, I think, one one or two runs, and then it was just like I didn't have a comment. It just was like I was so far out of my treatment by that point that I felt um, it's like I wanted to be there, but I was with all these other young survivors, and at that point I was burgeoning on not being that young of a survivor anymore, and so I sort of I would attend meetings once in a while and attend runs, but then I kind of petered out from that, and years went by. I guess what was it, 7, 8 years went by, and I just I remember every October, and I live in San Diego now. I think I said that, but the diving in Southern California, really, like, the best diving of the year, almost always, is between the months of September and about January. And so October really is like a diving month out here. Like, if you're a diver, you are in the water. And I just every October I would be driving by the harbor, and I would see people doing breast cancer walks and breast cancer runs, and I would see all this stuff about it, and I felt guilty, kind of. I just was like, well, I should be doing that. I should be raising awareness or raising money or doing something. And the more time passed, the more I felt guilty. And one day I was at a friend's house, and I confided to her that I just felt terrible. I felt like a terrible, selfish person not doing anything for breast cancer. And she said, you don't have to do a run. You don't have to do a walk. Let's charter a boat. Like, see if we can do a boat day and see if we can raise a little bit of money. And we basically, she was a dive master on a charter boat in San Diego, found me a Saturday that was available later in the month, which is a miracle on its own. And
Yeah.
then we chartered the whole boat and put some Facebook posts up and sold the boat out within like a day or two. And I mean, we just bought crap off of Amazon, like pink tutus and wigs and stuff. And we raised I think we raised probably like $1,500-$1,600 that first day. So it wasn't a hugely impactful thing in terms of like what we've actually made now, but um, it just it was crazy how much it took off. It was crazy, like the posts and the shares, and everybody just was so excited about it. And I got so many emails asking me how people could get involved. And I remember I went to D.V.M a few weeks later, and people that I didn't know were approaching me, and they were so excited about it. And so, the following January, I just decided, well, what the hell? And I went on to LegalZoom and, basically started a nonprofit. I have no idea. I still kind of don't know what I'm doing, but like, I really didn't have any idea what I was doing. And I just was like, well, I need to do this. And I need to do this. I'm in California, so I have this extra step. And yeah, and just started a nonprofit and ran, I think, a couple of boat charters that first year. And then after that, it expanded to every once in a while we'll do a boat charter or a remote trip. But the two major events we have now are we do an underwater photo competition.
Hmm.
That was an idea that came up. I think we've done, this year was the fifth or sixth one that we've done. And it was brought up to me by a friend who he's from California originally, but he's the photo pro at a resort in the Philippines, Crystal Blue Resort.
Oh
And he
yeah.
basically was like, yeah, so Micah Bardick, he's an old friend, great photographer. He was like, we should do a photo competition. And it just like everything else with us, I was just like, okay, why not? Like, let's do it, And it was the same thing with we have the other big event that we have is an auction, and it's just an online auction. I think at the time when I first started it seemed like a lot of people were doing, in person, like, gala auctions. And as a working stiff, I was just like, who has time to do that in the middle of the week? Nobody. And so I wanted to do sort of like an eBay, like online auction. And I found the cheapest platform that I could and grabbed, got a few donations and just wanted to see if it would work. And it's worked pretty well. So, I mean, those are two big events. And it just, honestly, when I tell you I don't really know what I'm doing, I really don't know what I'm doing. But in a way, I think that works well for me because people see that I'm just willing to just throw an idea out there and give it a shot, and make a little bit of an idiot out of myself. And I think it that appeals to people. We're not polished. We're not, perfect. So
It's sincere. It's sincere. It's
yeah.
gritty. It's getting the job done. And when you and I had spoken at D.V.M years back, you had mentioned that you wanted the money to go to scientists. You
Mhm.
work full time as a scientist, and you know where the
Right.
good research is being done and where to really put that funding. Can you expand a little bit on that?
Yeah, so there's two places that we send money. The first is it's a nonprofit called the Young Survival Coalition. That's a nonprofit that is uh, intended to really support women who are under 40 who are diagnosed with breast cancer. And so I didn't go into a lot of detail with that, but when I was diagnosed, I just remember thinking, this can't be real. Like, I I I didn't know anybody else my age who had breast cancer, or frankly, I think I maybe knew one person who had cancer ever, um, and I just remember being thrown completely for a loop. Everybody I knew was like, they were getting married and then buying houses and having babies, and my husband at the time and I had talked a little bit about whether we wanted to have kids and when we would do that and where we would raise them and all this stuff. Um, and yeah, that just, that went to the wayside because obviously when you get whacked with chemotherapy when you're young, you may have to reconsider whether you can have kids or whether, with certain types of breast cancer, at the time they were encouraging you to consider whether you should have kids. And so for me, it was a life-changing thing in a way that it's hard to express for people who haven't experienced that at that kind of age. And this was a community of young women who really understood that. And I was lucky to be in Boston because at the time, there was some online support, but it wasn't as prolific. Social media, none of that stuff is as prolific as it is now. And so these women, and I'm friends with several of them still today, really were there for me. They would come and visit me at the hospital. There was once or twice I got put in the hospital with an infection. And they would come and visit me after I had surgery, and they had, we were just all there to support each other. And I think that has really stuck with me, and um, that feeling of, to use a word that applies here as well, sisterhood. That's something. Those are people that are your age that really understand the nuance of what you're going through. So part of the money every year goes to make sure that young survivors can attend their annual symposium. And the one thing I always want to do, and you'll see this when I talk about the research as well, is I want to make sure that it always chapped me a little bit to donate money to nonprofits and just feel like I was sending it into a black hole. I like to know, I like to know where things are going. And it's not to insinuate that, um, that researchers would misuse it or that a nonprofit would necessarily misuse it. That's just me. I like to know, I like to be able to say, yes, I donated money and it went to do X, Y, Z. And so I asked them after a couple of years of donations, can we make sure that it goes to this? And so now I sponsor a certain number of young women every year, and so I know exactly where that money is going to, which I really appreciate, and I'm grateful to them for working with me on that. And then the other thing we do is we try to donate the bulk of our money to a lab that is working in an area of research that's impactful to breast cancer and currently to cancer in general. And so right now, and for the last, gosh, I think it's been maybe 6 years, a lot of our funding has gone towards Dr. Teresa Geis, who's also a diver and a spectacular underwater photographer. I knew she was a diver when I had first spoken to her, but I was unaware of um, her scientific prowess. Like I knew that she was kind of a badass, but I didn't know how much. And when I started looking into her. She's really incredible, and her lab is really incredible. So she is actually an endocrinologist, and her work actually investigates like factors that are within the bone that can impact whether and how much cancer actually will spread to the bone. And so that's something that impacts breast cancer, but also other types of cancer as well, prostate cancer, lung cancer, all kinds of other cancers. So it's something that really is pretty broadly important. And then every once in a while, we've been able to do this the last few years. We'll have a little bit of a discretionary fund. So if I know somebody or there's somebody in the local dive community who has been directly impacted by cancer or who has passed away from cancer within the prior year, we try to make sure that we give a discretionary donation in their honor. So last year, for instance, there was a dear friend of mine, Deanne King. She was a diver, underwater photographer. I had been friends with her for a long time, and I she passed away from brain cancer, and it's a really tragic story. She's not much older than me, and she had been on a dive trip and just come home from the dive trip and had a seizure and died, I think, 3 months later.
I'm so
So
sorry.
yeah, I mean, I feel like we've done a lot to honor her, but it just goes to show you it can't, like for me, I feel like these things happen and there's no reason that we can't try to shape the future outcome of how, I don't ever want somebody to be in the situation like I am where they're being treated with drugs that are going to make their hair fall out or that are going to make them have to consider whether they have kids in their future life. And so a lot of what I spend my life doing at work and then of course here is trying to make sure that we support that kind of future for people who are diagnosed with cancer. So,
It's important work, and
yeah,
you've walked in a set of shoes that not a lot of people have walked in. Being at that age, at an impasse where, to your point, people are having kids, people are getting married,
yeah,
they're entering these rites of passage, but your rite of passage at that point just simply sucked because it wasn't the typical rite of passage. You went
yeah,
into a different one, but there was something to gain and to learn from it.
yeah, yeah.
It changes the trajectory of how you view things, I think, and maybe changes how you approach life, a little bit differently. And
It does.
so I've seen your photography, and we'll link it after this, your page. Is there a favorite place? Is there a place, because I know you're a workaholic. I saw your post online and I had to share it because I'm the same. But so I've got to ask, are there places where the photography is stunning? Are there places where
Thank you.
you can just unload and go and photograph beautiful things? What are your top places?
Well, that's a tough question. Um, well, okay. So, I mean, I have to, this will sound probably kind of lame, but I have to give a shout out to California. California, um, the diving here is spectacular. I mean, I'll be perfectly honest with you. It can crush your spirit because it can be like 5 foot viz, like brown water, disgusting, 6 foot swell. Um, it can be terrible. And then it'll give you maybe a few weeks or a few months where everything is just spectacular. The most incredible things that I have seen in the water, I've seen in the water here. And I feel lucky every day that I moved out here. Um, and yeah, it's not the most comfortable diving all the time, but it's incredible. Um, I love it. And let's see, there's so many. For warm water, honestly, you know, for macro, honestly, one of my favorite places to go is Lembe Strait. I know that's cliche, but it shouldn't be, because Lembe just, it kicks butt. It just does. It just does. It's incredible. We love going to Lembe. Um, for wide angle, I would say on North Sulawesi, so right adjacent to Lembe, Bangka Island is one of my favorite places. Beautiful macro and a beautiful wide angle and macro there. And then we are going on a trip, leading actually a trip for Blue Green Expeditions in the spring of next year to Triton Bay. And I'll tell you right now, Triton Bay is a pain in the ass to get to. It is a pain in the ass. And I'm just putting that out there. It's a pain in the ass, but it is spectacular, spectacular wide angle. There's incredible macro there too. I think there's something like 5 or 6 species of pygmy seahorses. However, like I think there's more pygmy seahorse species there than you can see anywhere else. But for me, when we went there before, it was the macro that was just spectacular. We were with, it was my husband and I, we were with a friend of ours who actually passed away from bladder cancer the following year. Spectacular, I know, yeah. And the older you get, it doesn't really slow down, right? So, and he had been absolutely everywhere, everywhere in the world, and we came up every single dive, and we just said, "Wow, that was incredible." So that's a shout out for Triton Bay. There's a great resort there. There's also liveaboards that go there. Um, and then let's see, cold water, aside from California, another cliche cold water place, God's Pocket Resort, Vancouver, and that whole area of British Columbia, just incredible diving. And then honestly, I like Puget Sound as well. I think we've had some great experiences in Puget Sound up outside of Washington. Yeah. So Seattle. Yeah.
Nice.
So,
nice.
Yeah.
So
you need the gear for it, but it's worth it.
Yes, it is. It's a different kind of diving. So for the viewership that is more of the warm water diving type, the cold water offers an amazing array of just species, and it's absolutely stunning. So consider cold water diving. Ice diving is a whole nother level of crazy, but you know, that been there, done that. It's beautiful, but that's another. Susan Bangasser says, Allison, you are amazing. Thank you for all you do. And
Likewise, Susan.
She is spot on. Thank you, Susan. So you mentioned the trip leading for Blue Green Expeditions. Is there anything else on the horizon for professional, personal that you'd love to share or like to share?
I'm honestly like, we're only doing local diving for the rest of the year. We have to adult a little bit. We're putting a new roof on the house, and then I'm putting solar in I'm adulting some more that's not related to cancer before the tax credit goes away. And so we're being responsible for the rest of the year. We had a trip to God's Pocket, but I put a pin in that until next year. So next year is shaping up to be pretty cool. We've got this, it's going to be a pretty long trip to Triton Bay. And then, and I didn't mention one of my absolute favorite places. I can't believe I didn't mention this, Solomon Islands. So Solomon Islands is spectacular as well. And they have something for everybody. we've got the trip to God's Pocket next year, and then we've been talking about maybe going to the Solomons or Lembe over next holiday season, because I get a nice long chunk of time off over the holidays. So
Nice.
yeah.
Nice.
Unfortunately, like I used to be able to do a bunch of trips every year, and now it doesn't matter how much vacation time I have, because the older you get, the more senior in your role you get, and it gets harder and harder to take a bunch of time off without
Yes.
dumping all that work on somebody else. So
Yes, I understand all too well. It's hard, but it's good to go and play and do the things that kind of fill your bucket, and all the advocacy work, the photography, your role as a scientist, an advocate. It's a lot, but I think you're really doing what needs to be done to help those that are just in life changes, or just being inspired to do something to impact change. So it's admirable and amazing.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that that's something that, this is not something that's particularly unique to me, or it doesn't have to be. My point is that, I mean, I work ridiculous hours. I have a pretty intense day job. And if I can do this, if I can take a weekend, 2 weekends a year and make a difference, seriously, anybody can. Anybody can. You don't have to know what you're doing. The information is out there. It's easy to get things organized. You might have to throw a little bit of your own money in it at first if you wanted to, say, start a 501c3, but there's no reason that somebody has to do that. There's no reason that somebody can't volunteer with an organization that matters to them, and make a difference. And I will say that, like, for all of the work that it takes throughout the year, uh, the day at the end of the year that I pull together all of the money that we've made throughout the year and write a big check, or do a nice big online click and send that money to where it's supposed to go, is the best day of the year. And it won't matter if I'm in Triton Bay or the Solomon Islands or in Lembe or wherever I am or whatever I'm seeing underwater. That day trumps every single year of the year for me. It's really incredible. So
That's amazing. That's amazing. And depending upon what causes speak to people, there are so many out there, to your point of not having to reestablish something, going online. There are a lot of Wood-Off Sea Sisters that do a ton of nonprofit work, that if the viewership is interested in understanding and learning about more of the nonprofit, our roster online, it has an amazing array of really dedicated and motivated individuals. And Wood-Off Women Divers Hall of Fame as well has an amazing scholarship and grant program. It's obviously a nonprofit, and giving a lot of funding to those that are interested in all sorts of diving. It could be cold water diving, training grants, photography grants. They're everywhere. So, even just giving back and creating a scholarship through the Women Divers Hall of Fame. It's just trying to do something outside of the sphere can sometimes feel daunting, but if you can do it, we can do it. It's amazing.
And for photographers, I just wrote an article for the most recent Alert Diver, and it's called "Photography for Philanthropy," I think. And it's just it provides some ideas about how photographers can maybe do. Thank you, Bonnie.
Thanks, Bonnie.
It provides some ideas about how photographers can give back. Photographers are not always in the mindset of wanting to give anything away, because the gear is so damn expensive. But it does, that is one way that you can also support organizations that are meaningful to you. So
going back to the photography, how did that come about? Was that just a passion, or had you been a photographer your whole life? Like, how did that start?
Nope. Nope. I had an ex, my ex at the time in Boston, and he had this little like CNC point and shoot camera. And we went on a trip. He had bought it, and I stole it from him on the trip. And I was a diver and had been a diver for, well over 10 years at that point, and never thought to pick up a camera. I thought cameras were a pain in the butt. I never thought about it. I was not a topside photographer, nothing. And stole his camera, and I don't know what it was. I don't know what it was, but I started. There was a magazine at the time called Fathoms. It's I don't know if that's there we go. Yeah, blast from the past. I still have a bunch of my copies of old Fathoms magazines and old Wet Pixel magazines, like print magazines. I kept them, but it just became obsessed. And I think I shot a point and shoot for maybe a year or so. And about a year after I moved out to California, one day I was looking online at Wet Pixel back when they had, I think it was back when they had like the almost like the listserv like things that would go out. And I'm now dating myself. That's how long ago I moved out here. But I just remember I saw a woman was selling a whole setup of like a Canon digital SLR camera and like some lenses and some strobes and a housing and arms and stuff. It was basically like an all-in-one kit of like an older camera, and I just bought it. And I had no idea what I was doing. Again, just another idea that just was like, okay, I think, why not? So so I did, and it just sparked with me. And I dove a lot and I shot a lot. And when you're shooting out here, you get used to shooting in not perfect conditions. And there's a lot of really incredible creative photographers now, but I mean it was a little more conventional then, I think. And it just back in the day. And I just fortunately, because I think otherwise I probably would have been banging my head into a wall, but just dove a lot and shot a lot. And
it's a skill set,
passion for it.
It's a skill set. It's sometimes I think people can become intimidated. I know I am intimidated with a camera in my hand because I don't know how to position stuff, but there's so much out there that can help, especially we're dating ourselves at this point in time, but back then there wasn't a ton of resources, but now there are classes that it's amazing to be able to go and then to be able to enter these contests for Dive Into the Pink, for all of these amazing organizations
causes.
to be. Yes, it's great. It's great. So that was one of the questions I had written down, but I was like, where did the photography come in? How did that happen?
Yeah. So, again, it just was one of those things. Well, why not? Like, I think I'll just buy this camera because why not?
Because why not? Yeah.
I'm trying to think, like, the other thing is, I would, I still think that taking a one-on-one class in the water is one of the most meaningful things that a photographer can do. I think, I know there's a lot of, I would never dissuade somebody from taking a workshop, but I think being in the water one-on-one with somebody whose work you admire and working with them is really, it's really impactful. And it really, it's funny. I'm married now to Andy Sallmon, who's just a long time underwater photographer, professional underwater photographer. He's incredible. And I think for me, one of the most educational things that I've been able to do is just watch the way that he positions things in the water on a repeated basis, because there are nuances to things that you would never think of. And I still, I will say I still screw up, and I still watch what he's doing, because I wonder sometimes, like, is he doing something different that's going to be better, that's going to have a better outcome, that's going to light things better. It's really important to make sure that that you pay attention and watch how other people do things. So
Yeah, and those expeditions that you were talking about, plus, dive trips in general, there's usually a photographer on the vessel, being able
yeah,
to pick brains. It's a nice hobby to kind of maybe disassociate from the crazy stress of life, and
true.
to be able to work on a hobby, which I think a lot of us, need. So I know we had a couple of people write in, Bonnie and Susan. So I know we're almost at time, and I wanted to wrap a couple things up. Is there anything, if you had to give any piece of advice to young people coming into the industry, um, what would that be?
I think this applies to young people anywhere. Don't be set in what you think you're going to do, because life changes and you never imagine where you'll wind up. I professionally, I would never have imagined in a million years I would be doing what I'm doing now. And same thing with diving, and underwater photography and the nonprofit. I never would have imagined. Um, the one thing I wanted to say before, when we were still talking about cancer, this is a probably controversial, but um, I'm sure everybody knows who Lance Armstrong is, and I know that's a whole thing. But he wrote a book, and the book is called "It's Not About the Bike." And back when I went through my treatment, um, somebody sent it to me, and I read it cover to cover, probably in like 4 hours. And there was um, there was something in that book that kind of has shaped everything that I've done since I had cancer, professionally and with diving and the nonprofit. Um, he received a letter after he finished treatment. I think it was after he finished treatment, but the letter was from a cancer survivor. And the cancer survivor said in this letter to Lance Armstrong, "You don't know it yet, but we're the lucky ones." And I think I've tried to I've tried to take that in and live with that, because I I feel like there is an opportunity, for every bad thing that happens to you to turn it into something good.
Mhm.
And that's basically what I try to do. And it's something that I would encourage everybody to try to do. It's easy to get, to let things get you down, but um, that experience opened up the world to me. It really did, in a way that I don't think a lot of other people get that sort of opportunity. So it was a bad thing, but it was a good thing, right? So that's the number one thing I would tell any young person anywhere, dive industry or anywhere, is whatever bad things happen to you, just try to ask yourself, how can I turn this into something good? How can I turn this into a positive thing? Because that's the only control that we have. So
That's true. There's so much in that. Sorry, I'm about to sneeze. So sorry.
bless you.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm just gonna grab a Kleenex. There's so much in that the world is throwing at us, and being with the media, the news, friends, family, diagnoses, and I think sometimes we can feel overwhelmed, and that negativity kind of seeps in, and blaming others with this, that, and I think being able to take a step at a time, an hour at a time, a day at a time, to
Mhm.
try and reframe the circumstance, whether it's good or shitty, um,
Right.
and figure out a positive that comes from it. And kind of going back to what you said about your treatments and cancer. My friend Christy, she actually did. She was in Boston, so she was an amazing journalist and a writer, and through her treatment, she started a blog, and she wanted to educate women on breast cancer. She had the BRCA1 gene, and she didn't know, which put her at a much higher risk than the general population. So, and also talking about advocating for ultrasounds, because Christy had a mammogram that came back clean, and she had dense breast tissue that she wanted to have an ultrasound, and did, and that's how they found her cancer. She went through her treatments, and obviously we know how that story unfortunately ended, but she wanted to advocate or help empower others to advocate for, hey, this doesn't feel right, to your point. I have dense breast tissue. I want an ultrasound, and to just listen, to learn, ask about the BRCA1 and BRCA2 genes, how they affect you, talk to your providers about it. She was on a mission to educate others before she passed. So that's something I wanted the viewership to hear. And to your point earlier at the beginning, you said it just wasn't right. This isn't my body. I've been in it for 33 years. I need to go to somebody else. And that's what she was trying to empower others to do as well. So, and there are others that are taking the power of information, like having the BRCA1 gene or BRCA2 gene, and taking proactive approaches. And it's powerful in itself to make such changes to protect oneself. I have a friend, Bauke, who's doing that to increase her chances of not developing it. So
and to be perfectly honest with you, I didn't have to have I had a bilateral mastectomy, and I didn't have to. They discouraged me at first, and I actually went back at the end of chemo and said, I've been thinking about this. I'm not attached to this, and I would feel like I have a ticking time bomb on my chest, for the rest of my life. And my surgeon was like, okay, that's all I needed to hear. So, I think sometimes it does take a little pushing and some intention. And to be clear, I didn't have a BRCA1 or BRCA2 gene, and they have never found a genetic component with my cancer. I'm still enrolled in some sort of genetic screening program at University of Washington, but they don't know what happened with me or why I got it at the age I did. But I think that's a valid choice that every woman should be able to make for herself. So.
Yeah, and whatever feels right, and it's a personal journey, a personal choice, whether or not to have a mastectomy or just to have the lump removed. It's personal, and it varies from person to person, and it's just being able to have this extra information is empowering, because you think back, how things have changed and progressed in certain areas of choice, and being able to advocate for oneself is powerful in itself. So, well, I wanted to thank you for doing this.
You.
And this is a special one for me, and I can never repay you for how kind you were. You just listened to me blab on the D.V.M show floor, and I was losing my mind. And
Nonsense.
You were just so kind, and I can't wait to give you a big hug at the D.V.M show. And
likewise.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. And for anybody who wants to support us coming up, we do have an auction. I'm starting to get those prizes pulled together now. The auction will be, I think it's going to open on November 30th of this year. And Bonnie put the website up, and there's a link that'll go to the auction site. So if you want to support us, that would be great. But even if you don't support us, we're happy to have you come and take a look and just click like and whatever. Anything helps. So,
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you again for taking the time to be with me and Allison tonight. She's amazing. She's a kind person. She has raised a lot of awareness and spoken about her advocacy tonight, and hopefully somebody, the viewership here can take bits and pieces of what we spoke about, listening to your body, advocating for yourself, doing those breast checks, and if something doesn't seem right, go get it checked. And there are a couple of really close friends of mine that I've been thinking about through this entire segment and leading up to it. So a shout out to Cheryl, who has been braver than anybody I have known and has fought her fight and is doing so well. I am so thankful. And to my friend Christy, I miss you and I love you. And that's it. Thank you.